Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Last Friday, I shared with you my very first in a mini series featuring Distress Oxide ink blending, and I absolutely loved all of those different color combinations, and you guys did too. So today I thought I would show you how I take one of those color combinations and use the blending in a different way. So let's get into it. So the color combination that I'm using from last week is Scattered Straw, Worn Lipstick, and Festive Berries. I just really love that color combination. Someone in the comments called it Strawberry Lemonade, and I think that's the perfect description. So I found this glitter paper from Simon that looks really well with that color combo. This is the hot pink glitter paper. It doesn't really look hot pink to me. It looks more like a coral shade. I'm also going to use this stamp set from Simon called Ornate Love. I'm going to use one of the heart stamps in this stamp set. But before I get to actually stamping with the hearts, I'm going to cut down some white cardstock for the front of my card. I've trimmed this to about 3 7/8, maybe a little bigger than that, and then 5.5 tall. And I've put down a Tonic Easy Clean mat to help with blending, just in case I blend off the edge of the cardstock. So I'm going to start by blending with Scattered Straw. And you'll notice that I put that heart stamp off to the side and I'm placing it over top of my paper just to give me an idea of where that heart will eventually be placed. I want to have my blending radiating out from behind this heart. I want it to be a spotlight blending. That's what I'm calling it, spotlight blending, because I'm not having it go all the way off the edge, and I want it to fade out to white in a circular shape, if that makes sense. So I'm starting out with Scattered Straw, and for this video in particular, I'm not going to be speeding up the ink blending. Had a couple comments or requests to show ink blending in real time, so hopefully it won't get too boring with me just talking you through it, because it did take about 5 minutes to do all of this blending, or maybe a little less than that actually. But I wanted to show you that you have to use a really light hand, a light touch when you're doing this particular type of blending. So when I was blending on the yellow, I made a mental note, like, don't grip the handle on the ink blending tool, just hold it very lightly in your hand. And when I switched colors, I forgot that for a moment. So as I'm using Worn Lipstick, I am holding the handle of my ink blending tool fairly tight, even though I'm not pressing down a lot. And in a minute here, you'll notice that I'll switch how I'm holding it, because then I remembered, oh yeah, you're supposed to hold this really lightly. You're not supposed to hold it so tightly. And by holding not the handle, but the base of the ink blending tool, I find that just changing how I'm holding it, like there we are here, I switched right here. As I'm holding it, that's sort of like that physical reminder to be very, very gentle as I blend. I'm building color up a little bit at a time. That's how I get a really good blend. And you'll notice there are even some spots where things are a little darker than they would be or should be. It's not going to give me an even blend. But the cool thing about using Distress Oxide inks is that because they don't dry immediately or don't soak into the paper right away, you have a little bit of time to manipulate the ink and really move it around and get it to mix and meld with the previous color. The previous color isn't even dry. So I've moved on to Festive Berries. And the first thing I noticed when I started blending this out was that I needed to rotate my paper, because for whatever reason, I have a slightly lighter hand when I'm fading up to the top. So I decided to rotate that around. You might try that with your own blending. See if rotating your paper helps you get a smoother blend on the edges that are fading out to white. I'm also going to switch back to Scattered Straw. I noticed that Festive Berries was really overtaking that whole area. The yellow was getting smushed out of the circle area, and I'm also losing a lot of that Worn Lipstick color. So I'm going to switch back to Worn Lipstick here in a minute and go over the top of that center area to try to bring back some of that color. Like I mentioned in Friday's video, Distress Oxides are opaque. So you have the opportunity to take a lighter color like Worn Lipstick and put it over the top of Festive Berries and get it to blend a little bit more. I find blending with the oxide inks a little bit more forgiving as compared to blending with the original Distress inks, although they do give very different looks. I think I might do a little bit of ink blending with the regular Distress inks, maybe at the end of the Oxide series, just so you can see that there's a little bit of a difference in brightness and saturation when you're using the original Distress inks versus the Oxides. So I've switched back to Worn Lipstick, and I'm going to kind of bring in a little bit of that pink shade in the center. It's very subtle. It's not real in your face with this really kind of mid-tone pink. So I've got all my blending done. I'm going to put that heart stamp over top just to make sure that it's in the exact spot or the right size of blending for what I had in mind. I'm going to clean up my area here and move on to the stamping. But before I do the stamping, I'm going to cut off this little tiny edge on the side. Some of the blending had intensified color right on the edge as I was bringing that foam tool back in. So I just trimmed off the tiniest little sliver. And I'm also prepping the area for heat embossing. Before I actually stamp my image, this is a very important step when you're going to be heat embossing over top of oxide ink blending. You want to make sure that your embossing powder will not stick. You'll see here that I just poured some of that embossing powder on and it stuck to those areas that weren't completely dry. And if you do this before you start stamping, you have a chance to use a brush to brush away all that embossing powder. And then use a heat tool or just let it dry out in the air. And then you can apply a powder tool and test it again. And after doing my drying and powder tool twice, I was able to put on that heat embossing powder and have it slide right off. So now I'm moving to my stamping. I've got my MISTI stamp positioning tool and I put it down in the bottom corner of my MISTI and placing that heart stamp over top. I did use my EK Success powder tool to prep this area a third time just to make sure I have really clean embossing powder application. I'm going to stamp in Versamark ink. This is a really sticky ink and it's perfect for heat embossing. And it usually keeps your stamped image pretty sharp too, so I like that it doesn't kind of blob out everywhere. So I'm stamping that down, pressing with my fingertips, not too much. I don't want to press the stamp too much. And then I'll lift this up and then I'm going to apply some embossing powder. This is Gilded Embossing Powder from Burgess Monroe. It's a nice gold shade. And I'm sprinkling that on and tapping off the excess. And then I'll use my heat tool and heat set this. Now this melted really fast since my heat tool was nice and hot from when I dried that oxide blending. And since I have my Versamark ink and my embossing powder out, I'm going to go ahead and just do a little direct to paper inking right along this edge. And then I'm going to dip the edge back into that gold embossing powder. And it's going to apply just a nice kind of speckled edge right along the side. And if it's a little too wide, a little too much, you can use that brush that I used earlier, just a dry, clean brush, just to brush away some of that embossing powder. Then I use my heat tool to melt that edge. So I'm going to take a die set now. This is the Rounded Alphabet Small die set from Simon. And I cut these out of some white cardstock 4 times. I'm layering up these letters 4 times so they have quite a bit of height and thickness. And I'm using some Gina K Designs Connect Glue to glue them together. And I just hold each die cut with tweezers, apply some glue, and then press them together. Now, some of the letters got a little messy on top because these letters are really small and it's hard to handle them with glue. So I did do a little bit of cleanup using a Xyron adhesive eraser. You can use that with liquid glues as well. I like to use that to clean up any tape runner, but you can use it on liquid glues. So I glued down each one of these letters using that same Connect glue, and I just put that in place with tweezers. I'm going to assemble the card now, and then I'll add the rest of my greeting here in a minute. I'm going to use some white cardstock from my card base. I've already scored it so that it's a top folding card. And then I cut a strip of that hot pink glitter paper from Simon. This is about 1 inch wide, and I put it along the right edge of the card base. And then I put tons of foam adhesive. I was not shy with the foam adhesive behind my ink blended piece and then directly onto the card front. So when it comes to the greeting, I decided to stamp a little greeting from a stamp set from Kathy Zilski and Simon Says Stamp. I'll have the stamp set linked down below. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. But I wanted to show you guys this little trick about adhering vellum pieces. My friend Libby from Hero Arts mentioned this to me when I was at a make and take at Creativation a couple of weekends ago. She said, take some glue. She was using the Hero Arts glue, but I believe it's very similar to this Connect glue from Gina K Designs. And you smear the glue over the entire back of your vellum piece until it coats all of it, and then press it down onto your project, and it won't show any of that adhesive. So I'm not sure why I've never thought of this particular application before, but it definitely works. I want to test it out with some larger vellum pieces, but for these really small words on this card, it worked out really well. And you'll be able to see that in this close-up picture at the very, very end of the video. It's right here. I'm going to show it to you right now. It turns out really, really well to have the adhesive on the back of those vellum pieces. Really sets off the card and finishes that entire greeting area. So that is the finished card. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to share this card on my YouTube channel. I thought maybe I should just put it in an Instagram post or something because it is so simple, but it's really simple and easy to do. I thought it would give you guys some good jumping off points to make some cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's card. I will be back on, well, tomorrow, actually, Wednesday, with a brand new card video. I hope you guys will tune in. If you'd like to subscribe, hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you guys next time.